Nobody expected a Honda Civic part to become one of the most talked about components in the world of hypercars, but that is exactly what happened when Matt Armstrong and his team managed to cool a Bugatti Chiron engine using Honda Civic radiator cores. The idea sounds completely ridiculous at first. A Bugatti Chiron is one of the most expensive and advanced road cars ever built. Its massive W16 engine produces unbelievable power, generates huge amounts of heat, and was engineered by one of the most respected luxury performance manufacturers in the world. On the other side, the Honda Civic is known as a practical everyday car that people buy for reliability, fuel economy, and affordable maintenance. Nobody would naturally compare the engineering of these two vehicles. That is why the moment Matt Armstrong revealed that Honda Civic radiators were being used inside a Bugatti Chiron, the internet immediately exploded with reactions. Some people thought the idea was genius. Others thought it was dangerous and impossible. But when the car finally reached operating temperature and held steady without overheating, the conversation changed completely. Suddenly, this was no longer a crazy experiment. It became proof that expensive automotive engineering is sometimes far more replaceable than manufacturers want customers to believe. The entire story began after the Bugatti Chiron suffered serious crash damage during Alex Choi's accident. The car had already become famous online because viewers were following every step of the rebuild process. Matt Armstrong turned the restoration into one of the biggest automotive stories on YouTube. Every episode added more tension because the audience knew they were watching a team attempt something almost nobody else would ever dare to try. The Chiron is not a normal supercar. Even wealthy collectors fear repair costs on these cars. Bugatti parts are incredibly expensive, and the company tightly controls who can buy them. That created a huge problem during the rebuild because several radiator assemblies were damaged in the crash. The cooling system on a Chiron is extremely complex. Unlike normal sports cars that use only one or two radiators, the Chiron uses multiple cooling circuits and several radiator units to manage temperatures for different systems. Replacing all those damaged parts through Bugatti would have cost a fortune. This is where Bob entered the story. Instead of accepting defeat, he began searching for alternatives. Most people expected custom racing radiators or rare motorsport parts to be used, but Bob discovered something surprising. Certain Honda Civic radiator cores had dimensions and cooling characteristics extremely close to the Bugatti originals. That discovery completely changed the direction of the rebuild. Suddenly, the impossible looked possible. Instead of relying on Bugatti's supply chain, the team began engineering their own solution, using affordable components combined with fabrication skill and deep technical understanding. What made the story even more fascinating was that the radiators were not simply temporary placeholders. They were tested properly under real operating conditions. The audience watched temperatures rise during the first major warm-up test and saw the system stabilize exactly where it should. That single moment became symbolic of something much larger than just cooling a car engine. It became a challenge to the idea that only manufacturers can repair highly complex vehicles. It also showed how creativity, engineering knowledge, and determination can sometimes achieve results that huge corporations insist are impossible. One of the reasons this story became so popular online is because it perfectly represented the battle between independent mechanics and massive automotive manufacturers. Modern hypercars are often designed in ways that make owners completely dependent on official dealerships and approved service centers. Companies like Bugatti protect their technology carefully, and they also charge enormous amounts of money for repairs and replacement parts. Many people watching Matt Armstrong's rebuild already knew about Bugatti's reputation for expensive maintenance. Stories about six-figure repair bills have existed for years. Even simple service procedures on a Chiron can cost more than entire luxury cars. That created a feeling among viewers that Bugatti ownership exists inside a world separate from normal automotive reality. When Matt's team introduced Honda Civic radiator cores into that environment, it felt almost rebellious. It was not just about saving money anymore. It was about proving that engineering principles matter more than branding. Bob understood this from the beginning. He did not randomly choose Honda parts because they were cheap. He studied the cooling requirements carefully. He examined the fin density, overall surface area, and heat transfer capability of the original Bugatti radiator cores. Then he compared those measurements with available alternatives. The discovery that Honda Civic cores could perform similarly was shocking because it challenged assumptions people had about exotic car engineering. Many viewers assume Bugatti components are made from magical materials or secret technology unavailable anywhere else. But in reality, cooling systems still follow the same laws of physics no matter how expensive the car becomes. Heat must move away from the engine efficiently. Airflow, surface area, coolant flow, and thermal transfer all matter more than the badge on the front of the vehicle. Bob recognized that if those conditions were met correctly, the cooling system could still function properly. Of course, adapting the radiator cores into the Chiron was not simple. Fabrication work was required. End tanks had to be built. Mounting points needed adjustment. Connections and fittings had to be machined carefully. This was not a case of directly installing Honda parts into Bugatti without modification. It required serious skill and precision. That is another reason the audience respected the project so much. The team was not taking shortcuts. They were engineering a solution under difficult circumstances. Throughout the rebuild, viewers could see the stress on Matt's face whenever major systems were tested for the first time. The Chiron's cooling system carried enormous pressure because failure could destroy one of the most expensive engines in the automotive world. The W16 engine generates huge heat under load, and overheating can create catastrophic damage quickly. That made the first proper temperature test incredibly important. As the coolant temperature rose gradually, viewers watched the numbers closely. When the thermostat finally opened and the full cooling circuit became active, the entire internet seemed to hold its breath. This was a moment where the Honda Civic radiator experiment would either succeed or fail publicly in front of millions of people. When the temperature stabilized instead of continuing to rise, excitement exploded. Fans realized they were watching proof that the system actually worked. The result was powerful because it came from real-world testing instead of internet arguments. Nobody could dismiss the evidence because the car itself confirmed the performance. The temperature held steady. The fans operated correctly. The cooling system found equilibrium exactly as a properly engineered system should. That moment transformed the rebuild from a risky experiment into one of the most memorable engineering victories ever seen on automotive YouTube. The most interesting part of the entire Radiator story was how the audience slowly learned that the cooling test was about far more than just radiators. During the rebuild, one major fear continued to follow the Bugatti project everywhere. Earlier in the car's history, Alex had driven the Chiron without coolant after crash. That decision created huge concern because engines depend on coolant to control operating temperatures and protect sensitive internal components. Many viewers believe permanent damage may already have occurred long before Matt purchased the vehicle. One of the biggest concerns involved the water pump seals. In high-performance engines, water pumps circulate coolant through the engine and radiator system constantly. The seals inside those pumps are designed to remain lubricated and cooled by the coolant itself. If coolant disappears and the pumps continue operating, heat and friction can damage the seals very quickly. Sometimes the damage does not appear immediately. A compromised seal might survive short testing periods, but fail later during extended operation under full temperature conditions. That uncertainty created tension throughout the rebuild series, because nobody truly knew whether the engine had hidden damage waiting to appear. When Matt's team finally performed the full operating temperature test, they were unknowingly answering one of the biggest unanswered questions surrounding the entire project. As the coolant circulated and the temperature climbed steadily, every water pump seal inside the system was placed under real operating load for the first time since the accident. If serious seal damage existed, coolant leaks or overheating problems could have appeared during this stage. That is why Matt sounded genuinely nervous during the test. The audience was not only watching radiator performance, they were watching the health of the entire cooling system and possibly the survival of the engine itself. When the temperature stabilized around normal operating conditions without signs of disaster, relief spread across the workshop. Even small details became important. The dipstick inspection, showing clean oil without coolant contamination, suggested that critical internal sealing surfaces remained intact. For viewers deeply invested in the rebuild, this felt like a major victory. It meant the earlier no-coolant incident had not destroyed the Chiron completely. Some people compared the situation to Matt's previous Lamborghini Huracan rebuild, where severe cooling system damage created massive complications. That comparison made the Chiron's successful test even more dramatic, because the audience already understood how expensive cooling failures can become. Another major factor was the vacuum filling process used to refill the system with coolant. Modern high-performance cooling systems are extremely sensitive to trapped air pockets. Air prevents proper heat transfer and can create dangerous hot spots inside the engine or cooling circuit. Because the Chiron uses multiple radiators and complicated coolant pathways, correctly filling the system was a huge challenge. The team used a vacuum fill system late at night to pull coolant through the entire circuit. That procedure became another hidden test during the warm-up process. If air remained trapped inside the system, temperatures could spike unpredictably once the thermostat opened and coolant began flowing through all 10 radiators. But no dangerous spikes appeared. The temperatures stabilized smoothly. That result confirmed the vacuum fill process had worked correctly. Suddenly, every stressful late-night repair session, every fabricated bracket, every welded fitting, and every improvised engineering solution looked validated. The audience realized they were not watching lucky improvisation anymore. They were watching careful engineering succeed under pressure. Another reason this rebuild captured so much attention was because it represented something larger happening inside the automotive world. For decades, car manufacturers have increased control over repairs, parts distribution, and servicing procedures. Modern vehicles contain more electronics, more specialized components, and more software restrictions than ever before. Hypercar companies take this even further because they want complete control over the ownership experience. Bugatti especially has built a reputation around exclusivity. Everything connected to the Chiron feels rare, expensive, and tightly managed. Even wealthy owners sometimes struggle to obtain parts or independent servicing options. That environment creates frustration because many enthusiasts believe car ownership should include the freedom to repair and modify vehicles independently. Matt Armstrong's rebuild became symbolic of that larger debate. The Honda Civic Radiator story was not only about saving money. It represented resistance against the idea that ordinary engineers and mechanics are incapable of repairing elite machines without manufacturer approval. Viewers loved seeing practical knowledge defeat exclusivity. Bob's approach especially impressed people because he relied on engineering fundamentals rather than expensive branding. The radiator core succeeded because the heat transfer characteristics matched the required specifications closely enough to perform correctly. That is pure engineering logic. It does not depend on marketing language or luxury image. Many viewers found this deeply satisfying because it exposed how much of the hypercar world depends on perception. Of course, Bugatti still produces extraordinary vehicles with incredible craftsmanship and engineering complexity. The Chiron remains one of the most advanced production cars ever created. But the rebuild showed that not every expensive part requires magical technology unavailable elsewhere. Sometimes manufacturers charge enormous prices simply because they control the supply chain and the customer has no alternative. This realization spread quickly through online discussions after the successful temperature test. Suddenly, people were questioning other hypercar repair costs too. If Honda Civic radiator cores could cool a Bugatti engine successfully, what other supposedly irreplaceable components might also have practical alternatives? That question made the rebuild feel revolutionary in a small but important way. Another factor that helped the video succeed was Matt Armstrong himself. Viewers connect strongly with Matt because he presents complicated automotive work in a relatable and emotional way. He does not pretend to know everything. Instead, the audience watches him learn, struggle, fail, and improve throughout each rebuild. That honesty creates trust. When Matt looked nervous during the cooling test, viewers felt nervous too. When the temperature stabilized successfully, the excitement felt real because the audience had followed every setback leading to that moment. The story also benefited from strong pacing. The script constantly reminded viewers about the stakes involved. Every temperature increase felt important. Every mention of the thermostat opening created suspense. Even viewers without deep automotive knowledge could understand that something critical was being tested. The writing transformed technical details into emotional storytelling. Instead of simply explaining radiator operation, The narrative framed the test as a battle between failure and success. That approach kept viewers engaged through highly technical information that might otherwise feel boring. The repeated references to temperatures stabilizing around 92 degrees Celsius became symbolic of victory itself. That number represented proof that the system worked. It became evidence that the rebuild was moving closer to completion. More importantly, it showed that determination and creativity could overcome problems many people believed were impossible as the rebuild progressed. The Honda Civic Radiator story also highlighted the incredible value of skilled fabricators and independent specialists inside the automotive industry. Modern cars often appear mysterious because manufacturers surround them with complex branding and advanced technology claims. Many owners believe only official dealerships possess the knowledge required to repair these vehicles correctly. But projects like Matt Armstrong's Chiron rebuild demonstrate that highly skilled independent engineers can sometimes solve problems more creatively than manufacturers themselves. Bob became one of the heroes of the entire story because he combined practical fabrication skill with deep understanding of cooling system engineering. He did not simply copy the original Bugatti parts. He analyzed what those parts actually needed to accomplish and then created an alternative solution capable of performing the same function. That mindset represents true engineering. Throughout automotive history, innovation has often come from independent mechanics and race teams finding creative solutions under pressure. Motorsport especially is full of examples where small teams achieved incredible results through clever engineering rather than massive budgets. The Chiron rebuild carried some of that same spirit. Viewers watched a group of determined people solve seemingly impossible problems using workshops, fabrication tools, and persistence instead of unlimited corporate resources. That underdog energy made the series emotionally satisfying. Every setback increased the drama because the audience knew the team did not have easy access to official Bugatti support. Another important detail involved the repeated failures and adjustments during the radiator installation process. Some viewers unfamiliar with automotive fabrication expected the system to work perfectly immediately. But real engineering rarely happens that way. Leaks appeared. Brackets needed modification. Welding attempts failed. Components required rebuilding after transport damage. These problems actually made the project more believable because real custom fabrication almost always involves unexpected complications. The team's willingness to continue refining the system instead of giving up impressed viewers greatly. Late-night repair sessions became some of the most memorable moments because they showed the emotional pressure behind the project. The workshop atmosphere often felt tense and exhausted, yet everyone continued pushing forward because they understood how important the test would become. The successful temperature stabilization, therefore, represented more than just mechanical performance. It represented the reward for persistence. Many viewers connected personally with that theme because it reflects challenges people experience in their own lives. Success rarely arrives smoothly. Problems appear constantly, and progress often requires repeated attempts. Watching Matt and Bob continue solving issues one by one made the final success far more satisfying emotionally. Another fascinating aspect was how the internet reacted after the successful test. Some automotive enthusiasts celebrated the engineering achievement immediately. Others argued that long-term durability still remained unproven. That debate actually helped the video gain even more attention because people became emotionally invested in defending different opinions. Supporters viewed the project as proof that independent repair culture can challenge manufacturer monopolies. Critics worried that viewers might underestimate the complexity of hypercar engineering. Both sides continued discussing the radiator setup across forums, social media, and YouTube comment sections. This ongoing conversation extended the impact of the rebuild far beyond the original video itself. It also demonstrated the power of online automotive communities. Millions of people around the world could watch, analyze, and debate a cooling system test almost in real time. Very few automotive projects create that level of engagement. The reason this one succeeded is because it combined technical fascination with emotional storytelling perfectly. At its core, the story was simple and powerful. A team refused to accept that a damaged hypercar was beyond saving. Instead of surrendering to impossible repair costs, they engineered their own solution and proved it worked under real conditions. That narrative naturally inspires people because it celebrates creativity, courage, and practical skill. By the time the Chiron finally completed its successful cooling test, the entire rebuild had evolved into something much bigger than a YouTube project. It became a public demonstration of how knowledge and determination can challenge assumptions inside the luxury automotive world. The most powerful part of the story was not actually the Honda Civic radiator cores themselves. It was the evidence created by the test results. Once the temperature stabilized successfully under operating conditions, the proof existed permanently online for anyone to see. That changed the conversation forever because people could no longer dismiss the idea as internet fantasy. The evidence came directly from the car. The Chiron reached operating temperature. The fans activated correctly. The cooling system stabilized instead of overheating. Every viewer watching could see the results themselves. This public proof created discomfort for people who believe hypercars should remain completely dependent on manufacturer control. The rebuild suggested that independent engineering solutions may sometimes work far better than companies want customers to believe. That possibility matters because repair costs influence the entire ownership experience of exotic vehicles. Many owners fear accidents or mechanical failures more than driving itself because replacement parts can cost extraordinary amounts of money. If practical alternatives exist for certain systems, the economics of ownership could slowly begin changing in the future. Of course, not every Bugatti component can be replaced with parts from ordinary cars. The Chiron still contains highly specialized engineering throughout the vehicle. But the Radiator story proved that some systems may rely more on fundamental engineering principles than exotic exclusivity. That realization encouraged many automotive enthusiasts because it preserved hope that complex cars can remain reparable outside official manufacturing networks. Another important theme throughout the rebuild involved transparency. Matt Armstrong documented the entire process publicly, including mistakes, stress, failures, and uncertainty. Traditional manufacturers rarely allow people to see that side of automotive engineering. Official repair environments often appear polished and controlled. In contrast, Matt's workshop showed welding attempts, leaking coolant, damaged brackets, and exhausted mechanics working late into the night. Ironically, that honesty made the successful result feel even more trustworthy. Viewers saw how difficult the process really was. They understood that the final success was earned through repeated problem solving instead of hidden corporate support. This transparency also educated millions of viewers about automotive systems in ways traditional media rarely accomplishes. Many people watching learned about thermostats, coolant circulation, radiator fin density, water pump seals, and vacuum filling procedures for the first time. The script explained these concepts using emotional storytelling rather than textbook language, which made complicated engineering understandable for ordinary audiences. That educational value became another reason the rebuild spread so widely online. People were entertained while also learning how real mechanical systems function under pressure.